Good morning and welcome back to school, Cajon Valley Union School District. Boy, I wish I could see you in person right now. And if you are at home, if you're watching from a distance, thank you for tuning in. If you're watching from your classroom or department or from a multi-purpose room, I hope you're social distancing and being safe. And I also hope that you're enjoying a breakfast. I sure hope that my breakfast is there for me after the presentation today. But thank you so much for tuning in and welcome back to school. This is not your ordinary welcome back breakfast. Last year we were here with Tom Murray, a great keynote speaker that had us singing Living on a Prayer at Shadow Mountain Church, and we had Flying Hills performing for us. We had talks, we had presentations from our leaders. This year I'm going to try to keep the program to an hour because I know there's a lot to do today and it's a long time to sit in front of a screen. So one of the things that I do want to do, make sure we do, is we have a tradition of having some of our kids introduce some of our speakers. So we're going to do that. But before then, on behalf of our governing board, thank you very much for all that you do. On March 13th, when we shut our schools, the district didn't close. We served meals, we provided distance learning, and we kept the work going, providing services to our students and to our community. And for a lot of us this summer, we didn't close during summer either. We actually opened our schools and we served over 6,000 students with about 900 staff showing up to serve our kids in real time, face-to-face, providing learning and enrichment and love. And thank you for all those who showed up during the summer. You know, I made it a habit to start my presentations with some pictures of kids. These are some pictures from this year's TEDx, and thank you TEDx team for making this happen virtually. Kind of like this breakfast. And it just reminds me of why we do what we do, why I'm so lucky to have the job that I have, and to serve this beautiful community of Cajon Valley. And thank you for those that showed up to put on my possible future self. And actually, our keynote speaker today, Miles McPherson, was booked months and months ago, pre-COVID, to talk to you about strengths, interests, and values because he gave a great talk about how we use our strengths to find our purpose and our mission in the world. And it aligns so well to World of Work. And there's a little bit of story of why the message changed just a little bit. But our core curriculum, our modern curriculum, should teach kids how to live and how to make a living. And that's really where these modern curriculums are born. See them right behind me too, computer science, TED presentation literacy, our emotional learning, which we actually built into the World of Work. And so many of you might remember Jose Saavedra from TEDx a couple years ago. Here's just a reminder of who that kid was.
A bully's like a big grizzly bear, so when you see him, play dead. No, seriously, ignore the bully.
And so the skills that Jose is displaying there are not the hard skills on the right side of the top most in-need skills. It's more on the left side. And the hard skills, they'll change over time, but these soft skills, creativity, persuasion, collaboration, adaptability, and emotional intelligence, that's core to what we're developing into our students. And shortly after, actually right before the pandemic in February, Jose was asked to give a talk at San Diego State University.
Jose Saavedra, who's a fourth grade student at Bastonia Language Academy in El Cajon. At a very early age, with the help of his first grade teacher, Jose discovered his love for public speaking. Jose has been very passionate about speaking and sharing on different topics that currently affect our community.
For years, there has been a sewage issue in our border between San Diego and Tijuana that have prevented us from enjoying our beaches with freedom and have also affected the population and nature of both regions. Los niveles de contaminación del agua en el río San Diego han aumentado enormemente en los últimos años. Recientemente, más de 50 millones de galones diarios de agua contaminada fluyen a través del río Tijuana, alcanzando el Océano Pacífico. This has caused the closure of Imperial Beach, which is typically enjoyed by local residents and surfers.
So now Jose is incredible, and his speaking and presentation skills are off the charts, right? But beyond the presentation skills, what we're really building is happy kids engaged in healthy relationships on a path to gainful employment. And these next short clips from some TEDx talks will really show why we changed the message from strengths, interests, and values to hope for a racially divided nation, and relationship skills, happy kids engaged in healthy relationships. We couldn't have done it without a TEDx team, and thank you for those. Here's Kristen and Jen. They were able to watch some of the early talks, and this is Zia from Cajon Valley Middle School.
Afghanistan is in the heart of Asia. I lived my whole entire life in there, and I moved to US in March 2017. America, I want to show you the real Afghanistan. This is what you may see when you imagine Afghanistan. Bombs, people dying, and a dirty environment. But this is what I also know about Afghanistan. It has good places to visit, a good education. It has a good education because when I was in Afghanistan, for only less than a year at school, I learned how to speak English.
Now, we filmed this in late May, so Zia came with his dad and his brother, and I got to sit actually live and see this one from the back of the theater at Greenfield, and his dad and brother had tears in their eyes because their the brother was telling the story, and the classmates embraced him, and you can start to see the theme coming. Here's Rakia telling her story from Chase Avenue Elementary School.
Do you shower with that on? Do you have hair under there? Are you bald? These are the type of questions I get when I'm wearing my hijab. Imagine every time you leave your house, you know you have to be ready to expect hateful and cruel comments thrown at you. Hey there, I'm Rakia. I'm an ordinary young girl living life. I am full of dreams that will hopefully become true. I'm a hijabi. That means a girl with a scarf on her head. I came here to talk to you about my life as a hijabi.
And then she goes on into her talk to talk about really the rite of passage and how she decided at a younger age that she was going to start to wear her hijab. And sounds familiar from a quinceañera or a sweet 16, maybe a bar mitzvah. Rite of passage is something in common that kids share and can relate to. Here's Max talking about his story from Flying Hills.
I'm talking about the tics that cause involuntary movements or sounds when you have Tourette's syndrome. For instance, you might repeatedly blink your eyes, shrug your shoulders, or make unusual sounds. As I speak to you today, I don't want you to feel bad for me. I want to inform you on what many kids and adults are battling every single day. When I was younger, I always had some strange things I would do without even knowing it. I would blow out my nose like I had a big booger in it, and I would blink my eyes a lot.
TEDx Kids at El Cajon is a chance for kids to share their story, not just with the global audience, but with their peers, with their friends, to get to know each other deeply and well, and start to form relationships. And one of the last talks I'll share with you is Apiu from Lexington, and what a courageous kid.
When I get to school, I can have breakfast if I want it. When I come to my classroom, I can choose a hot lunch or a cold lunch. Kids eat snacks during recess. When I get home, I have a delicious meal cooked by my mom or dad. I have never suffered from hunger. I am the lucky one. At school, I begin my day doing math on my computer. My table works as a whiteboard. We have crayons, pencils, paper, everything we need. I learned to read and write. I learned about science and social studies. I am learning math. I even learn about what kind of jobs might be in my future. This is not like the Cajon refugee camp. We are the lucky ones.
She's right. We are the lucky ones. And don't those images make you want to go right back to school and go see our classrooms and kids? And then shortly after that, Berlin and Bristol, two of our students out of W. Hall and LCC, they created East County Kids News to help us through the pandemic, and they found Apiu and they interviewed her. And this is really what happens when kids start to share their stories. Take a look.
And that I could push people forward in the world and know that they're lucky, and that we shouldn't take anything for granted because we actually have life better than other kids in Africa.
The conversations our kids are able to have with each other because they've shared their story really lead to amazing outcomes. And I'll share one last talk. Actually, this is the warm-up speaker to your keynote speaker. This is Precious from El Cajon Valley High School, who actually graduated from CVMS, and she came back to give this talk. And it leads right up to Miles McPherson.
Promoting and learning, and more importantly, what are we teaching? Most of the time, the case seems to be that we are promoting and learning stereotypes and stigmas about each other. We can choose to turn these stereotypes around for better, or simply choose to ignore them. Because if a stereotype doesn't apply to you, why be bothered? Instead, I urge you to choose to rise above the discriminatory stereotypes you have been labeled with because of your group or surface level appearance. It might seem hard at times, but I hope I inspire you to embrace yourself for who God made you to be and be comfortable in your own skin, both figuratively and literally. I'm following this advice by transitioning from relaxed hair to my natural hair. But unfortunately, there's a stereotype that natural hair is unprofessional or not fit for the workplace. Stereotypes like this baffle me because it's like telling someone they aren't fit for a job because their eyes are too small, their ears too big, or their accent too thick. And the fact that I stand before you today with a message such as this, with an afro, shows that professionalism has many faces. Must we change the surface before our skills and work habits, actual indicators of professionalism, can be seen? Besides, I know I look good.
Thank you, Precious. And that was one of my favorite talks of all time. And you know, closer to the summer, during the pandemic, we had an outbreak of riots and protests, and topics like racial tension and equity and justice emerged. And people started asking, what are we doing about that? What is the district going to do? How are we going to make sure our kids don't fall into these same stereotypes and traps? And the TED curriculum, the social learning, all the things that we're doing in our classrooms are doing just that. It's helping our kids form healthy relationships and happiness, self-esteem, self-identity. And today's keynote speaker, Miles McPherson, we're talking about world of work, and really it's more appropriate for him to share his book, The Third Option, and a story that he's going to tell about his own personal journey, but how that applies to not just our children and the work we're doing to help them tell their story, form relationships, and find similarities, but also for each one of us and the own bias that we might possess. So I hope you enjoy this message. On behalf of the governing board, welcome back, good morning, enjoy your breakfast, and let's go to Liberty Station, where former San Diego Charger, creator, founder of the Rock Church in Liberty Station and the East County Rock, and author of The Third Option. Take it away, Miles.
How you doing, everybody? I'm Miles McPherson, and I want to thank Superintendent Miyashiro for this opportunity. I am so encouraged to encourage you today, and I want to encourage all the teachers, the staff of the Cajon Valley School District. You guys and ladies are amazing. I remember all the teachers, I should say all the teachers, I remember so many teachers in my life, more than coaches, because I had so many more teachers than coaches who have invested in me. And as you know, and I know people tell you this, but the investment that you're making in those students is going to shape the direction of their life. And I know your mission statement is happy kids engaged in healthy relationships on a path to gainful employment. What an amazing, amazing mission statement. When I was watching the videos about your World of Work program and the kids speaking in the TED Talks, it is unbelievable how you are directing all these students to pursue employment opportunities and options based on their strengths and how you follow Strength Finder. I mean, I know my strengths, and it's important for me and all of us to operate in our strengths. So Superintendent Miyashiro and I have been talking about this for years, talking about that very issue. But then all the racial tension blew up in our country. We decided to shift gears and talk about that. I've been talking about that for several years since I wrote a book called The Third Option, which you all can get on Amazon. But it is so critical as you lead that you have some tools on how to navigate all the conflicting perspectives and definitions and ideas and opinions about what's racist, what's not. Do I need to be for defunding the police or against defunding the police? There's so many conflicting opinions, and I know that you are all right in the thick of that. And I know you have like 50-something languages out in the East County, and so I know it's probably very confusing. So my hope is that these next few minutes would be an encouragement to you and give you wisdom on how to navigate your classrooms, your families, in these discussions and in these comments, where you can stand on solid ground that you are operating and having these conversations and engaging in these different opinions with clarity. And that you also have clarity about what you believe and why you believe it. This content that I'm going to be talking about today is not for the other person. It's for you. And so I ask that you receive it humbly for you, that it will make you a better person and give you clarity about how to see through all the confusion that's in our culture. So as I said, I grew up in New York, Long Island, New York. I grew up in a black neighborhood, went to school in a white neighborhood. I have 4 grandparents, 2 grandmothers, and 2 grandfathers, all from Jamaica, West Indies. I had a white grandmother whose parents sent her from Jamaica, West Indies to Jamaica, Queens, New York, so she wouldn't marry a black Jamaican. And if you've ever been to Jamaica, Queens, New York, there's a whole lot of black Jamaicans there. So she meets my grandfather, and when they dated, he was not allowed to go into the front door of her house. They did not want her marrying a black person. He had to go around the back door. And when they got married, they cut her off. So I grew up with Grandma Dorothy, who was white. We never met her family. They lived 15 minutes away. Never heard of them, never spoke of them. It was like they didn't exist. So you had all these brown people, and my white grandmother had another grandmother who was half Chinese and half black. And so in my house, we had the United Nations. Both my grandfathers were black, Jamaican, all from Jamaica. But I grew up in a neighborhood in Long Island that was all black, went to school in an all-white neighborhood to a Catholic school. And I got harassed in the white neighborhood because I wasn't white. I got harassed in the black neighborhood because I wasn't black enough. But when I went to my house, I had the United Nations, and we all got along fine. And when I played football, we got along fine, and our football team was mostly black and white. It was very segregated back then, so it was mostly black and white, and we all got along great because we had a common cause and a common enemy. The common cause was to win the game, and the common enemy was the other team. Remember that. If we could have a common cause, a similarity, common enemy, if we all said we all want to get along, and we fought for that, and we all had a common enemy, which was division, imagine what we can do. So that was my life growing up. But I remember when I was 8 years old, Martin Luther King was killed. And I remember very, very vividly the segregation in the country, watching stuff on TV. Even our TV was black and white, it wasn't even color. But I remember seeing all the stuff that was going on, especially in the South. It was a lot worse than where I was in New York. The division and the hatred and the racism. And it was so disheartening. And I remember when Martin Luther King was killed, I felt so hopeless. But I also thought, what can we do? What are we going to do? Because he was a symbol of the hope of bringing us together. And I've had that gnawing at me all this time. And here we are, many, many years later. We're living in an us versus them culture. Everywhere you look on television, it is us versus them. You're either for Black Lives Matter or against Black Lives Matter. You're either for defunding the police or against defunding the police. You're either for kneeling at the national anthem or against kneeling at the national anthem. You're either Republican or Democrat. I mean, it's us versus them in so many different ways. We live in a culture of division. And you feel like if I pick one side, that I'm automatically the enemy of the other side. And if I pick one side, which all of us feel like we have to, you are a sellout if you agree with the other side. And I imagine all the conversations y'all are getting in at your jobs and your families, behind closed doors, it's always about, I shouldn't say always, it's probably about us and what we believe versus them. And that is what's tearing us apart. Well, there's a third option, and that's why I wrote this book called The Third Option. Instead of picking us versus them, there is a third option, and the third option is that we give honor to what we have in common. We have more similarities than differences. Now, let me tell you something. I'm not saying that giving honor to what we have in common means that we all have to be like them. That we all are unique in our own way, but we are all doing the same things a little differently. I wrote one of the chapters in the book is on culture, and culture simply means how we do things. And all of us, all of our different cultures that we all come from, we're pretty much doing the same things a little different. We're all eating our food. We're all raising our kids. We're all having our own weddings. We all like to sleep. We all want to have purpose in our life. We're all enjoying our kids play soccer, baseball, football, whatever. We're all doing the same things. We just do them a little differently. And in our us first, them cancel culture, it's almost like if you don't do it my way, you're wrong. Well, what if we focused on all the things that we have in common and the uniqueness we bring to the table? And focused on our similarities, because we have more similarities than differences. I was in a prison talking, and as I was in this prison, I had just finished talking to the yard and all these guys out there, and it's very segregated. The white inmates were together, the black inmates were together, the Hispanic inmates were together, the Pacific Islanders were together. And I had just finished speaking, and these 3 white supremacists were walking around the yard. They didn't have their shirts on. They had their tattoos, and they were just, basically saying white is right, black get down, brown get down, black get back. That's kind of what they were making a statement with how they were strutting around the yard. And I felt this leading to go up and talk to them, so I walked up to the track, called the guy over, the head guy. There was one guy up front, and then his 2 guys were behind him. They couldn't even walk next to him. And they're just walking around, basically flashing all their tattoos to everybody. And he comes up and he stands right here in my face. And all the inmates, I had just finished talking, a couple hundred guys out there, 300 guys, whatever. And he comes up and he stands right here. And we had this brief conversation. And what was ironic is that he had so much ink on his body that he had painted himself black. I'm like, brother, in my mind, I'm thinking, you kind of defeating the purpose. You're supposed to be a white supremacist. You blacker than me. But what we didn't realize is that he and I were 99.5% genetically identical. I want you to think about that. He and I are 99.5% genetically identical. We have exactly the same organs, same muscles, same bones. If a doctor cut him open and cut me open, the doctor will be 100% confident I'm gonna find the same thing in the same spot. We have so many similarities, and yet we all focus on our differences. So I want to talk to you about the third option and how we can come together by focusing on what we have in common. So I'm going to first tell you how we got divided, and then I'm going to share with you 6 steps to coming together. And again, as I said in the intro, this is not about those people. This is for you. And my encouragement is that it would open your eyes and encourage you to see how we can come together and how the people that you formerly thought were so different are just like you. What an amazing thing if we can get to that place. Now, sociologists refer to how we separate ourselves from different groups of people. They refer to it as grouping, And grouping means that we are all parts of multiple groups. For example, all women are a group. All guys are a group. All married women are a group. Single women are a group. All managers are a group. So we're all part of multiple groups. All athletes are a group. All pro athletes are a group. All pro football players are a group. All pro football players who play cornerback or lineman or the line or quarterback, all those are separate groups. So all of you who are watching, you are all part of multiple groups. And once you identify a group, you understand the variations of the groups you're in, and you don't understand the variations of the groups you're not in. The groups that you're in are called in-groups. Very simple, not complicated. So if you're a guy, you're an in-group, part of the in-group of the guy group. If you're a woman, you are part of the out-group of the guy group. So all of you, whatever group you're in, that's your in group. Whatever group you're not in, you are part of the out group. Once you identify the people of your in group, these are people who you've been around. These are groups that you spend time with. These are groups that you identify with. These are groups that you understand. One of the characteristics of your in group is that you understand the variations of the people in your in group. I'll give you an example. I was on vacation, and I went to the gym to work out, and there was a guy in there working out. And I'm like, that dude is an athlete. How do I know that? Because that's my in group. I've seen so many athletes. And you could tell the difference between someone who's an athlete many times and someone who's just working out. I like, that dude's an athlete. But then he had shorts on. I looked at his legs. I said, he's not a football player because he doesn't have football player legs. Now, what does that mean? I've seen thousands and thousands and thousands of football player legs. From the age of 10, I've played football all the way up to 25 years old, and I've never seen those legs in a football locker room. And why? That's my in group. I understand the variations of the people in my in group. So I went up to him and said, yo, man, my name is Miles. What's your name? Blah, blah, blah. I said, what do you do? And he said, I play professional hockey in the NHL. Boom. Now, what does that mean about his legs? Because he skates and doesn't run, he developed the front of his legs more than the back of his legs. See, we run, so we develop both front and back. And so he was my out group as far as hockey, football, but we were part of the in group of being athletes. Here's what happened. Even though we came from two different sports, I don't know hardly anything about hockey. I know they play on ice, they hit a black puck, and there's like 10 black dudes. That's it. That's all I know about hockey. I don't know anything about hockey. But we talked about what we had in common: off-season, training, rehab, injury. All the things that we shared, we compared notes and got educated based on what we had in common. Now, my in-group is football. I understand football. My in-group was athletes. I understand athletes. And so I got to see that he was not part of this in-group, but he was part of this in-group. So when you have an in-group, you understand the variations of your in-group. Another example, for all you ladies out there, for all you mothers out there, you know what motherhood does to your life. I've never been a mother, but I've seen it. Obviously, my mom, she had 5 kids in 6 years. My mom was 4'11", had 5 kids, 6 years, 5 cesareans. My wife had 3 kids. And if you have had a child and raised a child, you know what that's like. So I want you to imagine these 3 women who are moms talking about motherhood. And then this young lady who hasn't had a baby yet, she just found out she's pregnant, comes into the conversation and says, oh, I'm gonna have a baby, I hope I have a girl, I'm gonna comb her hair, we're gonna play house, I'm gonna get her a dress, we're gonna build it, we're gonna have tea parties, blah, 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 and it's all Pollyanna, all gonna be great. Now, I'm not saying that stuff's not gonna happen from time to time. But what Sister Girl does not realize is that her body's gonna change. Her hormones are going to change. She ain't going to sleep for probably a decade. She ain't going to comb her hair probably for a decade. We have pictures of my wife. Her glasses were like this. Her hair's all jacked up. And we just say, oh, those were the 90s when our kids were little. Her life was jacked because taking care of little kids is 24/8. It's 24, not 7. I know what I said, 24/8. It is all consuming. But because motherhood was her out group, because she hadn't had a baby yet, she didn't know what she was talking about. The mothers who had the kids, they knew. So again, when you're in your in group, you understand the variations of the people in your in group. If someone's part of your out group, by definition, you do not know them. Why is this important? This is an in group. If you're Italian, that's your in-group. If you're black, that's your in-group. If you're mixed black, that's your in-group. If you are Asian, that's your in-group. If you're white, that's your in-group. If you're Republican, Democrat, that's your in-group. And so you understand the people in your in-group. You understand how they think, how they walk, how they talk. You understand how you're supposed to act. You understand the positions you're supposed to have. And sometimes those positions, you just take them just because. You don't even think about them because if that's what we think, that's what we're going to do. And you don't even give any thought to the other perspective. That causes us first them. And so just understand, once you're in your in-group, you understand the positions you have and you understand the ideas you're not supposed to have and that you won't even consider because that's the out-group. Now, whatever your in-group is, you understand the variations. Here's the flip side. By definition, you don't understand your out-group. You may have ideas. You may have anecdotal ideas, perspectives, pieces of information. I don't even want to call them facts. You may have had an experience with one of those people. You may have saw something on the news about one of those people, and therefore you will take those few facts and apply it to the whole group. That's called stereotyping. But just understand, by definition, if it's your out group, you do not know the truth, the whole story. You may know a little bit of the story. So in group, you understand. Out group, you don't understand. Let's keep that in mind because as we go through, as you look around the room where you're at, by the way, if there are people in your out group, whether it be a gender out group, an occupational out group, a status in your job out group, different managers, different levels, if you've never been there, you don't know. You may know a little bit, but you don't know the whole story. Ethnic out group. Just understand, if that's your out group, there's more that you don't know than what you know. Keep that in mind. There's more than what you don't know than what you know. Now, once you identify your in-group, you apply in-group bias. In-group bias is our tendency to give preferential treatment to the people in our in-group. In other words, the people who are like me, I understand them, I'm around them all the time, we communicate good, so you're gonna give them preferential treatment or you're gonna give them favoritism or you're gonna treat them more favorably than the people in your out group that you don't know that well, that you're not as comfortable with. So I'm gonna read 9 characteristics of in-group bias. And again, look around the room, the people who are part of your in-group, you're gonna treat them this way, more than the people as part of your out group. Now, keep this in mind. I'm leading you to someplace because I'm leading you to a place where you can actually make the people of your out group part of your in group based on your similarity. In other words, if you can just find something similar with the person that's part of your out group, guess what? They become part of your in group. It's not complicated. If we focus on our similarities, and we have more of them than we don't. Let me read these 9 characteristics of in-group bias. This is how you treat people who you consider like you. The preferential treatment. And by the way, this you can go from doing out-group discrimination, which comes next. You can go from I don't know about you to giving in-group bias just like that. And I'll tell you in a minute how, because I experienced it so many times. 9 things. It said, I am more comfortable with my in-group, those like me. I am more inclined to spend time socially with those who are like me. I am more patient with those who are like me. I give the benefit of the doubt quicker to those who are like me. If you are like me and I see you as like me, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt quicker. I express more grace when mistakes are made by those like me. I'll give you another chance. It's okay. It is easy to communicate with those who are like me. I assume. Powerful. I assume I will get along easier with those who are like me. I am more willing to go out of my way to help those who are like me. I possess more positive assumptions about those who are like me. I want you to listen to the last one. When I know that you're part of my in-group, I may not know you, I just consider you part of my group. I have assumptions about you that are more positive than if someone told me you were part of my out group. And I don't even know you. I don't even know you. You walk in the room, I don't even know you, but if for some reason I consider you part of like me, I'm gonna assume better. You know how arrogant that is? That if you're like me, you're better than not. That is the ultimate, anyone like me is better than people who are not like me. That is pride, arrogance, and guess what that causes? Division. So I want you to think, all the people in your in-group, you give in-group bias to. I told you I was going to give you an example. I've walked into rooms where people didn't know me. And they just kind of ignore you, whatever. They just kind of put you. And then they find out I played for the San Diego Chargers. They're a San Diego fan, or a football fan, or a sports fan, or a celebrity fan. It don't matter. But as soon as they see this affinity, oh, I'm a Charger fan, I'm a football fan, I'm all of a sudden part of somebody they want to be part of the in-group, and all of a sudden, hey, how you doing? Hey, and they want to cuddle up and, get an autograph and talk, and hey, talk to my daughter, whatever, depending on when that was. But the thing is, all of a sudden, someone you didn't even want to talk to, just like that. You could do that every day. Matter of fact, my definition or descriptor of people who are people persons, is that they do that naturally. They see someone and they find something in common and all of a sudden they're friends. It's not complicated. Culture is looking for something that's different to say why you should be enemies. What I'm talking about is finding a reason to be friends. Now, if we do in-group bias, the opposite is out-group discrimination. In other words, if you're like me, I'm going to be nice to you, but if you're not like me, let me read them. It's just the opposite of those 9. I am less comfortable with those who are not like me. I'm less inclined to spend time socially with those who are not like me. I'm going to avoid you. I don't want to live near you. I don't want to go shop where you shop. I don't want to go eat where you eat. I'm just going to avoid you. I am less patient with those who are not like me. I give the benefit of the doubt slower. You have to prove yourself more than the people who are like me. You ever hear that term? Oh, we have to work twice as hard. That's right there, right there. You're not like me. You got to prove yourself twice. That person only has to prove themselves once. I express less grace when mistakes are made by those who are not like me. In other words, you make one mistake, people who are like me, I give you another chance. You make one mistake, you're not like me, that's it. That's it. It is more difficult to communicate, so I'm probably not going to try. I don't assume I'm going to get along. If you walk into a relationship and you have the assumption this is not going to work out, guess what's probably going to happen? It ain't going to work out. Because you're looking for any crack of a door to say it ain't going to work out and to bail. You're looking for any crack of the door. So your assumption is negative. Number 8, I am less willing to go out of my way for those who are not like me. I'm less willing. And here's the last one. This is the heartbreaker. I possess less positive assumptions about those who are not like me. I want you to process this for a minute. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what zip code you live in. I don't care what socioeconomic level you're at. If you look on television, you look at the news, which I would encourage you not to watch a whole lot of, it'll poison your mind. This is what racism is all about. Racism is when you see the humanity in someone else as less than yours. And we do it because of color. We do it because of, in parts of the world, tribe. In Africa, the racism is not black on white, it's black on black. But the difference is tribal. In India, it's caste system. Other places, it's accent, it's geographic. We find all kinds of reasons to say, you are less than me. You are less than me. And once I decide that you are less than me, my assumption about you are less favorable than the assumptions about people who are like me. And when you walk into a conversation or an encounter with this assumption that you are less than, that means you deserve less justice, you deserve less opportunity, you deserve less patience. That is racism 101. Now, you may say, well, I'm not a racist. We're going to get to that in a minute. It doesn't matter. You can be racially offensive and not be a racist. And I'll explain that here in a minute. But I want you just to think about in-group bias, out-group discrimination. Because very simply, if you looked around at your family, your neighborhood, your job, especially your job where people come together who are from all different parts of culture, if you look around, at that football, that's what we did. We had people from all over that came together. If you look around at all the people in your world and say, listen, do I give you less benefit of the doubt than that person because you're not part of me? And if that's true, don't beat yourself up, just change it, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Just make them part of your group. So 6 things you can do. Number 1, acknowledge that you have blind spots. Acknowledge that you have blind spots. There's things you don't know that you don't know. A blind spot is the gap between the intent of what you say and the impact of what you say. Say it again. A blind spot is the gap between the intent of what you say or do and the impact of what you say or do. Remember, The Titans was probably the best movie ever. If you have never seen that movie, and in this movie, it was a white school, high school in Virginia, had a football team. And Denzel Washington coached a black school, and at the time, the schools were segregated. They were apart. Whites went to school together, blacks went to school together, and they brought the schools together, and Denzel became the coach of the football team at this white school with his black players. And so they went through this whole racial reconciliation process. At first, it was ugly, then it got better at the end. You got to watch the movie. There's a scene in the movie where a white player, Sunshine, blonde hair, he came from California to Virginia. He didn't understand the racial tension and division in the South. He came from California, where things are a lot cooler. We get along different, especially then. He's walking down the street with 2 black players who are from Virginia. They understand the racial tension. And Sunshine, white kid, Petey and Blue, 2 black players are all playing football on the same team. Sunshine said, let's go into the place and get something to eat. 2 black players saying, we can't go in there. This is Virginia. They said, why not? We can go in there. Let's just go in there. So anyway, make a long story short, they go in, and Petey and Blue, the 2 black players, are standing behind Sunshine saying, this ain't going to work out. And Sunshine's like, hey, why can't we come and eat? So he comes in and says, hey, we want a table. And the manager comes up and says, we're not serving today. We're full. And Sunshine says, wait, I see tables all over. He says, we're not serving y'all. Anyway, they go out, they get kicked out, and Petey and Blue are yelling at Sunshine saying, we told you. And Petey says, I told you we couldn't go in. And Blue says he didn't know he had a blind spot. He had a blind spot. And then Petey says he didn't want to know. Now, I don't know if he didn't want to know or not, but the question is, do you want to know? Or are you so stuck that I'm right? Or how would you like to know what your blind spots are? One of the most famous blind spots is when people say they don't see color. I remember the first time someone said it, they didn't see my color. I thought they had eye stigmatism. And so I was like, man, that's jacked up. You can't see blue, red, yellow. And they said, no, I don't see your color. And I was like, if you don't see my color, how do you know I have a color that you shouldn't see? Your eye processes shape, distance, depth, texture, and color. You can't not see color. And even if you were colorblind, you would see gray, black, and white. And when you close your eyes, you see black. So you can't not see color. But when people say that, their intent is to build a bridge. But the impact is that you just told the person of color, everything of what you are and what comes with your color, I'm going to ignore. It's offensive because it's a burden that comes with every single color. I remember this lady, a friend of mine, she went to Hawaii to get a tan. She got all brown because she wanted this guy she wanted to look good for this guy. Ironically, she wanted him to see her color. She goes and she gets a tan and he's not talking to her. She's all upset. And she was celebrating her tan she got in Hawaii. It's ironic that we celebrate the tan we get in Hawaii, but we invalidate the tan we get in the womb. You can't not see color, and by saying that, it is a blind spot and offensive. Another blind spot is privilege. Now, how many of y'all, by a show of hands, wherever you are, right-handed? Raise your hand. The world was made by right-handed people for right-handed people. Think about it. When you were in school, the desk was on your right side. So you got to put your elbow on the desk and write, and you didn't have to look because you can talk to the girl next to you. Your arm was braced. You had a point of reference. I'm left-handed, and all the lefties out here, we know, you were out here drawing like this. You couldn't brace your arm on anything. If you're right-handed, you can get a golf driver at any golf shop. If you're left-handed, good luck. If you're right-handed, you can get a catcher's mitt, play catch with your son or daughter at any sporting goods store. If you're left-handed, good luck. And while I'm driving around looking for a catcher's mitt because I'm left-handed, you're at home playing catch with your son, asking me, what's taking me so long? It's called right privilege. You don't even realize you had the privilege or the advantage because it's how you've lived your whole life. It's a blind spot. And so when people say, yeah, I'm having a hard time finding a job, I'm having a hard time getting treated right, and you think they're making it up because your experience is the opposite. And it may be that you're right-handed living in a right-handed world, or you're right-handed living amongst right-handed people. You are receiving in-group, right-handed is your in-group, bias every day. You don't even know what out-group discrimination is when it comes to that. But the people who are left-handed, living in a right-handed world, are bumping up against it every day. They're bumping up against out-group discrimination every turn of the way. It's another description of the racial division in our country. So admit that you have a blind spot. Now, one of the reasons people have blind spots is because of our social narrative. Our social narrative is the story that shapes how you see the world. All of you, your families come from different parts of the world, potentially, or here in America, but you have a specific culture. And when you were growing up, your family, your neighborhood, your school, put all this information in your head about people like you, whatever like you means. And you learned a perspective about people like you. But you also learned about those people. Who works hard, who's smart, who's not smart, who to trust, who not to trust. And that created the blind spots because you learned that your perspective is the right perspective and everybody else is wrong. So number one, admit you have blind spots and admit that you do not understand the perspectives of your outgroup. And guess what? They're trying to live the same life you're trying to live. Number two, rename those people to brother, sister, or neighbor. So if I consider you my neighbor, I'm supposed to love you as I love myself. Here's the problem. If I rename you something less than neighbor, I don't need to love you. You're not my neighbor. Or you're not like me. Or you're not part of my in-group. In other words, I'm going to love people who are like me. I'm going to love people who I consider common to me. And if you're not like me, you believe something different, you live somewhere different, you're coming from a different culture, I don't have any affinity to you. I don't have any connections to you, so I don't need to love you. That's the mentality. And we do that by labeling people. And once we label them something lower than what we label ourselves, we dehumanize them. We excuse ourselves from loving them. One of the amazing things about the students who are speaking at the TED Talks, I don't know those kids, but I would say they are amazing, they are bold, they are courageous, they are articulate, and when you put those labels on those kids in the TED Talks, and you will now see them through that filter, and you will treat them through that filter. And so if we can put positive labels on people, we would treat them through that label. So it's important to put labels on people that are honorable because you can't treat someone above the label. If you call someone ugly, you'll never see them cute. If you call someone dumb, you'll never see them smart. So we want to get rid of that title, those people. Number 3, give in-group love to your out-group. And this is the whole crux of this. Once you identify someone who's not part of your in-group, because remember, we're trained to look, how are they different? How are they not like me? Okay, so if someone's not your ethnicity, someone's not your gender, someone's not your social economic, your level in the company, how do I give them in-group bias as though we were the same? And you know how you do that? Identify a similarity. Are they human? Boom, do they bleed red? Boom, do they understand sadness? Boom, are they trying to raise their family and keep their job and live in safety? Boom, boom, boom. I mean, we just keep going on and on and on. Are they hungry? Do they like food? Do they like hot food? Do they like dessert? There's so many different ways you can create a member of your out-group to be part of your in-group, and thus you can give in-group bias. Number 4 is acknowledge your brother, sister's color. I already talked about this, but here's the thing. Acknowledge people's color. Acknowledge it as being legitimate. Acknowledge that it has a burden. Acknowledge that there is a history to it, and respect it. I know in our culture, we say white people and people of color. That's the culture, us versus them. White people and people of color, as though white is not a color. But white is a color. If you go to the dictionary, go all the way to the back to the W, or you just go to color and look at the colors, white's a color. Matter of fact, based on the theologian and philosopher Fred G. Sanford of Sanford & Son, and if you don't know who Fred G. Sanford is, Sanford & Son, please Google it. He was a comedian, and he had this theory that white people were more colored than anybody. Why? In springtime, they're white. In summertime, they're either red or brown. And when they get cold in winter, they turn blue. That's the American flag +1. You got more colors and variations. Here's the issue. We're all different shades of brown. And then there's red, then there's blue, then there's burgundy. I mean, I got brown, browner, and burgundy. Those are my colors. We're all different shades of brown. We have that in common. Culture will say white people and people of color, and then we have to pick a side. And then we have to say, well, here's what we believe, and here's what we believe, versus saying, wait a minute, let's talk about the things that we share and share ideas and our variations of and perspectives of those same things, and we'll come together. Number 5, view every conversation as a race consultation. In other words, every time you have a conversation with somebody, you are having a conversation of race in your head. Give people opportunity to self-disclose to you who they are, versus imposing on them your assumptions about who they are. Instead of imposing on them what, especially if they're your out group, the 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 bits of information that you heard about those people. Instead of imposing those on people as fact, when you meet people, give them opportunity to self-disclose to you who they are, what they're about, where they're from. And number 6, give your heart to those who are not like you. Unless we put our heart and soul in the well-being of our brothers and sisters, our neighbors, it's not going to change. There was a baseball player, Rod Carew, one of my childhood heroes. He's in his 70s now. My complexion, from Panama. He, when he was 71, had a heart condition, heart and kidney. And he needed a transplant. At the same time, there was a 27-year-old white NFL player, Conrad Ruin. He went into a coma because of a brain aneurysm. Ended up donating his heart and kidney to Rod Carew. And Rod Carew ended up, his mother called up Rod Carew and said, I think my son's heart and kidney are in your body. Understand this, when Conrad was 11, he met Rod Carew, came home and said, I met my hero. He ended up giving his heart and kidney to Rod Carew. And Rod Carew called his mother called up Rod Carew and said, do you want to come listen to your son's heart beat my chest? So Conrad's mother goes over to Rod Carew's house and listens to her son's heart in his chest. If we're so different, how is it that this white guy can put his heart into this black Panamanian's body? Let me encourage you. Put your heart and soul into the third option. Looking, identifying, and giving honor, placing value on that which we have in common. And we'll see amazing things happen in our life. Thank you very much.
I know if we were all here, we'd be giving a warm round of applause for Miles. Thank you so much, Miles, for joining us this morning. We appreciate you, and we'll see you very soon. And Cajon Valley, we're just about at 9:30, and I have just a little bit more of program and a short story to tell you at the end, and then we'll get ready to get back to work. I hope you enjoyed your breakfast. I can't wait for mine. It's sitting right there. But a quick update for our schools. And this is a modified version of a presentation we gave to our school board on Tuesday night. And so we did a lot last year in terms of distance learning and putting together the digital tools we've been using for almost 8 years now into a format called playlists. And a lot of kids did really well, and a lot of kids struggled. And our parents gave us some really hard feedback that we leaned into. And so this year's plan for full face-to-face learning online is going to be robust, and it's going to be intense for us and for our kids. The other thing that we did last year is we provided free childcare for essential workers, and that program ran successfully all the way through the summer. And thank you for all those who served at Chase and Extended Day Child Nutrition and everybody else who volunteered their time to participate. Because this gave all of our principals a chance to visit and walk through schools and see what it was like to actually do this work in person so we can create our reopening of schools plan. And this article from the Voice of San Diego talks about Cajon Valley was the first district to have an approved plan by the board. And it did not come without criticism or public comment. But looking back, I wouldn't change anything because we got to know our parents in a very deep and meaningful way and really got to lean into different communities to see what they wanted from us in the opening of school. And so this is our timeline. We got together in person with our unions and our board and our principals in early June to draft a final plan for board that was approved on June 11th. Part of that plan was to start and open a summer learning and enrichment plan at 27 of our schools, and all of our schools opened, moving towards a safe opening of schools on August 19th. And in this plan, we offered our parents and teachers 3 choices, basically. Traditional school, come back to school 5 days a week, a blended version of that, 2 to 3 days a week with some distance learning, or for those parents who didn't feel comfortable sending their kids back to school yet, we would provide 100% distance learning just as we are starting the school year this year. We also surveyed our parents and asked them to commit to one of those options. And at the same time, we asked our teachers to commit to one of those options, and we were fortunate that just about the same percentage of students and teachers opted in for the 100% in person. Actually more teachers than students for the hybrid, and a little bit less in terms of teachers wanting to teach 100% at home. And the data from this survey gave our teachers and principals what they needed to form classes and to communicate parents what the start of school would look like for their children. So away we went, planning for summer and also planning for the opening of school. And after 6 weeks of summer enrichment, we had some pretty good data. All 27 schools opened. Over 6,000 students were on-site learning with teachers and support staff. Over the course of time, we served almost 750,000 meals, 11,000 counseling sessions, and 850 plus teachers and staff showed up to serve our students. Thank you all so much for showing up for our kids. And then this happened.
Hello and welcome to the Learning Curve Back to School, a News 8 special. I'm Carlo Cicchetto. Tonight, we're taking a deep dive into an issue affecting hundreds of thousands of San Diego families, the shutdown of classrooms as the pandemic forces schools to start the new year with distance learning.
With summer break came plans to improve virtual learning for the fall, though some districts like Poway Unified and Cajon Valley Union announced they'd be offering in-person instruction as well to those who preferred it.
As a therapist, I know it is really important for their social emotional well-being to be with each other.
Then came a major announcement from the governor on July 17th. With coronavirus cases on the rise, he ordered schools and counties on the state's watch list cannot reopen until that county has been off the list for 14 consecutive days, a feat San Diego is unlikely to accomplish anytime soon.
Now, as we wait to go back into the classroom, we wanted to know what those classrooms will look like in the future. So I visited the Cajon Valley Union School District to find out.
Lots of signage, lots of reminders.
Officials at Chase Avenue Elementary School in El Cajon already have a good understanding of what classrooms should look like. That's because for the past couple months, they've allowed children on campus as part of the Cajon Valley Union School District's summer enrichment program. You'll also see desks spread at least 6 feet apart, fewer students in the classroom, face coverings on teachers as well as kids. They're required for those in the 3rd grade and higher. Community water fountains are disabled and group areas have been eliminated. In addition, health screenings and temperature checks are done daily and washing hands frequently is a must. Hanley says as the pandemic changes, so too could the classroom setting. But for now, he's confident with the system in place, saying district-wide, when given the green light, all of its schools will be ready to welcome back kids full time.
Students want to hug their teachers. There is that level of touch that's needed, but we're all adapting. And again, it's exciting to see our whole district that is making changes to accommodate those that are willing to go back to school.
It's been a collaborative effort top to bottom.
James Miller with the district's Board of Trustees says while other districts like San Diego Unified and Chula Vista Elementary have decided to start the upcoming school year online and others have criticized returning to campus, he stands behind this model, saying kids are not only safe, they're happy too.
If we follow all the protocols, if the kids are taught, as well as the parents, the teachers, and the families are taught, we can do this.
Now, I'd be lying if I didn't say I was a little bit frustrated at the change after we put so much work into our planning process, to running the summer program safely, and then actually putting plans together to open the school, to learn that now we only have 1 month to plan for full-time distance learning. And I know that was a huge lift to the principals and teachers, and thank you so much for the bargaining teams also for getting everything done and preparing for the start of school next week on the 19th. You've done such amazing work. But as much as we understand the need for safety, of course, if we have no adherence to the rules, we're going to have bad outcomes. And some of you might have seen this picture from a Georgia school taken by one of the students. This school is actually closed now because they had an outbreak, but there weren't social distancing, they weren't wearing face covers, and there were no safety procedures in place. But our plan in Cajon Valley was directly aligned with California Public Health, and these guidelines, which have changed over time and become more and more strict, have shown that we can do it safely without an outbreak. And so what's happened is not only are we safe in our classrooms, but San Diego has improved its numbers. And this is where we are in terms of getting off the state watch list. If you look here, we have on August 12th and then yesterday, August 13th, we have 2 consecutive days of meeting the below 100 positive tests per 100,000 in San Diego County. If we do that today and have below 100, we'll be officially off the watch list, which presents us a 14-day countdown. So technically, we need to have 17 days in a row where we're not on any of these 6 data points over the limit, and we will be officially off the watch list. And all schools in San Diego County can open, and hopefully lots of our hair salons and restaurants and local businesses too. Now, the other thing that happened is the governor introduced a waiver process, meaning that if states were still on the watch list, which we were last week, we could apply for a waiver for grades kindergarten through 6th grades to come back to our campus. And what that would allow is for districts or counties that are under 200,000 per 100,000 case, they could apply to the county office, San Diego County Public Health, for a waiver. And that's a 14-day turnaround period that basically shows that we've acquired our PPE, we've established safety procedures, we've communicated with stakeholders, and that we posted our plan publicly on the web. And we've done all those things. And a lot of people are asking, well, why is this important? Well, if in the next 14 days we have 101 or 102 positive tests per 100,000, that whole timeline starts over again. And so hope is not a strategy when it comes to predicting the future. And this waiver process would give us a guarantee that at least for our primary school students, that they could come back in some form. This would also allow us the opportunity to open our schools for free childcare for our essential workers and run camps with recreation and sports and STEM activities, much like we did between March and June for our essential workers. And what I want to emphasize most is, You know, a lot of us talk about our kids and how are they doing. And this example of a child showing what distance learning was like for her is a good example of what it's like for all of us. That video was shared to me by Mike Serban. Thank you, Mike. And it's impacted a lot of people in a lot of different ways. I've heard some teachers say, yeah, I feel like that way too. And Liv McNeil, who made this short film, was talking about her experience about the pandemic loop. But I think a lot of us can relate. And I know for certain that the teachers and staff that supported summer learning this year, when you talk to your parents and the parents said, I saw my child for the first time in 4 months, they came home and talked about their day. We saw just how important and essential our schools and our services are. But this year, because of the initial announcement that all schools will be on distance learning, there are some opportunities for kids. Some of you might have heard of learning pods and parents hiring a teacher or a retired teacher to take small groups of kids in the neighborhood to teach them and take turns rotating between houses and providing really education so that the parents can go to work or work from home while their kids are taken care of by other adults. Some of them are taking them out and putting them in and charter schools and private schools that have already applied for waivers and will be welcoming kids back very soon. I share this. I practice ice hockey at the rinks at La Jolla. It's called UTC Ice. They sent me an email, and basically they're opening camps for kids to follow the San Diego Unified School curriculum in distance learning. And kids can pay $1,000 a month to come skate and then have a tutor help them through their distance learning, have a meal, skate again, finish up their distance learning, and then their parents will pick them up. And now that sounds very appealing to me if I were a kid. I love to skate. And for parents that can afford it, we're not going to begrudge them. They're doing the best they can to provide their kids a meaningful and happy experience and also get their distance learning done because it's no easy feat. The thing that's most concerning to me is there was already an equity gap in our schools, but the school closures take the equity gap and expand it exponentially because our children that have parents that are working to make ends meet and both have to go to work will leave a lot of our children home alone. We saw that last year between March and June. A lot of kids will have no help, no one looking over their shoulder to provide them assistance with their distance learning. And so when we talk about which kids will get left behind, it's the kids that have not. And that's not okay. We already know that for a lot of our students, school is the place where they have their best 2 meals of the day. It's the place that they're going to be loved and cared for and looked after and stroked positively to feel good about themselves. It's the place that they're going to build healthy relationships and foster those meaningful connections with their peers and the adults. And most importantly, the learning loss. We've seen that happen already, and we can't leave these kids out in the cold anymore. We have to let them back into our schools. And you did. And thank you for all those. Thank you for the teachers, for the staff, and for the administrators who put together this amazing summer program.
As soon as school shut down, we knew that we wanted to keep serving our students and our community, and we also knew that was going to take a huge team effort. Everyone from child nutrition to IT department, teachers, principals, custodians, everyone was ready and willing to show up for our students. I couldn't be prouder to serve in this district, and I'm just so grateful for everybody that's showing up for our kids.
I did weigh, my health concerns versus doing what I love to do, and when I weighed that decision, it was just overwhelming that I felt like I needed to be there for the children. Giving out meals to children, looking at their faces and their smiles as they come and they say hello and they say thank you. That experience right there, there's no words for it.
The past few months has been very challenging, but it also has been the most rewarding period of time in my working career. I'm immensely proud to be a part of a team that is so passionate about serving students. There's nowhere else I'd rather be.
Every single day, my students say it was the best day ever. They are so excited to be here. I can tell they're smiling underneath their masks. So it's just been nice to be able to be back doing what we love in this new adapted way.
It's really important for students to be able to be in school in person, to socialize and interact with each other, but really important for my students with special needs to be able to be on campus, to interact with me and interact with each other. I miss my students terribly, so it's great to be able to be with them and see them every day.
I mean, my teacher heart is just full seeing these students being back on campus. It's wonderful to see that we are able to do this safely together and learn in a way that supports our community and supports the health of all our students and staff.
So many people have been an important part in getting kids back to school, whether it be online or in person, and it makes me feel so great to be part of this district.
The initial shock and stress of this whole thing going into it, at first I felt alone, but then the continued, emails and phone calls from everybody in the district, newsletters has been really refreshing and reassuring to me that I'm not in this alone and that we're all in this together. And it's been a great support from the whole district.
At the end of the day, safety first, and then that additional education is all that you're looking for as a parent. So a huge thank you to all involved, as far as to make that successful. And it really gives hope, that we can continue that process as far as into the future.
Thank you, Cajon Valley, for everything you've done. Keep rocking.
Thank you. Thank you. We love you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so every one of you that has the Cajon Valley badge, you are an essential worker and you are appreciated, and thank you so much. And I want to bring back these statistics because there are a couple statistics that we didn't list here. But after 4.5 months of essential childcare, after 6 weeks of having 6,500 kids back on our campus, we didn't have one positive test of COVID in students. We had to shut down one cohort because of a symptomatic child, communicated with the families, and brought the kids back after 14 days. There's still a lot to learn here, but there's a lot to be proud of in the sense that we were able to show that we can do this safely. The other thing is we are essential workers. It's listed right there on the website. And you know what? This is actually not the full list. I couldn't fit it on the screen. And we are number 8, community-based functions, but we're on the list. We made the list. Here's the list in Britain. Schools and nurseries, they're number 3. It's just a different set of priorities. And I share that jokingly because I want to share just one last story about when I first decided to become a teacher. This is actually my 3rd year of teaching. when class size reduction came and we had 20 kids instead of 33. And I thought, where's the rest of my class? But I remember in college, I went to my mom and I said, Mom, I'm going to be a teacher. And my mom was a middle school algebra teacher. And she was disappointed. And she looked at me and she said, you could do so much more. And I was shocked. I was thinking my mom was a teacher. She'd be pleased I was going to be a teacher. And it was the first time in my life, really, that I heard anything negative about schools and teaching. I looked up to my teachers. I had an experience. I loved it so much that I wanted to do that work. But after that, my friends would make jokes about, yeah, you have a 9-month job and a 12-month salary. You guys get summers off. Those who can't teach. And I would hear these jokes as I would go to work, and I loved my job. But beyond that, when I became a principal and assistant superintendent, to start hearing how the U.S. ranks on the global scale and how American public schools are not given the status they deserve. And it really made me angry. But when I saw that we were listed as essential workers, it made me proud. Yes, we are. Because for the first time, after 5 months of school closures, parents and community and businesses saw just how important the teaching and learning and care that schools provide is. Not just for the nurturing of the kids, not just for the economy, but for society as a whole. For the first time, we can show up as essential workers and essential workforce and do the work of serving our children during really hard times. I don't know about you, but I'll never look at nurses the same way again. After watching the way that they showed up and worked during these adverse conditions, I have a new appreciation. And even just going to the local grocery store, Trader Joe's, I'm a little bit more thankful and patient with the clerk and a lot more appreciative. When you think about how hard it's been for all of us in the pandemic, and it's been hard, a lot of people have shown up to serve. And it's our turn to show up in our schools so that the equity gap doesn't increase, but can close, so that our kids that need us the most will have somewhere safe to go. And for the kids that really are suffering from that pandemic loop and need the human connection, can get back to some normalcy. You've done that work and will continue to do that work. And I couldn't be more proud and thankful again. Happy kids engaged in healthy relationships on a path to gainful employment. And for the first time in a pandemic, a district put together a flash mob with choreographers from district and one student from Madison. And so enjoy Don't Stand By Me.
And there's a recognition of our interdependence that requires of this moment that we direct a statewide order to stay at home. We need to bend the curve. We need to recognize reality.
Don't stand so, don't stand so used to me. Please don't stand so, don't stand so used to me. Don't stand so, don't stand so used to me. When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon